And we are live. So 5 minutes late, but there's a 5-minute rule there, and there was a text. So sorry about that. Here we are. It is, let's see, it is October. That's right. It's October. And you know what that means? That means that Halloween is just down the road, probably about 24, 25 days away. And so we have our Halloween lineup here for the entire month of October. And this is the first episode of Halloween Hellfire, the 60th episode of our podcast, American Werewolf in New Jersey. I'm welcoming back to the show Jack-o'-lantern Jocelyn. Welcome to the show, ma'am.
Hi.
And we've got Brom Bones here in the house. So always nice to have some regulars back here with us as we kick off the first of 8 perhaps even 9 Halloween features. Yeah, 9, I believe. We'll be covering 9 different movies over the course of the month for October, but this is the first, and we're starting off strong with Tim Burton's classic Sleepy Hollow. So if you guys are ready, we can get it going. Shall we do that?
Yep.
Boogie woogie. So apparently I'm never moving fast enough because you guys are switching aliases like, you're on like the top 30 most wanted or something like that. I wouldn't put.
We're just feeling the Halloween spirit.
And I did this one just because of the movie that we're covering. So,
Fair
it's
enough.
appropriate.
Fair enough. So, I mean, this movie coming up 22 years now. It's not exactly a newbie anymore, 1999. Not the first time we've covered a Christopher Walken movie. We covered Cronenberg's The Dead Zone. Not the first time we've covered a Johnny Depp movie. We covered Polanski's The Ninth Gate, which he actually made in the same year. And if there ever was 2 contrasting performances in an actor's career, it would be these 2 movies. But he seems to have made back-to-back. It's not the first time we've covered a Burton movie. Jocelyn and I were here for Big Fish. So, I mean, and I think I personally covered From Hell, which was the Hughes brothers movie based on the Alan Moore graphic novel pertaining to Inspector Aberline and the Jack the Ripper murders down in the late 19th century. So, I mean, all of these characters, performers, directors, all familiar territory. Yeah, I mean, it's not the first. This isn't our first rodeo, but this is probably among the more fun movies that we've covered that fall under this particular umbrella. It's kind of special. It's a detective story. It's actually quite complex. The character that Depp plays, Ichabod Crane, is based off the Washington Irving short story, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, and I think he does a fantastic job. It's a premier performance, but not everything in terms of how he plays it is what it appears to be. I mean, he appears to be quite silly, and there are tons of comedic elements. He's buffoonish, but he's not a fool. It's actually quite an entertaining movie. So I'm glad we're covering it here.
It feels very modern, Sherlock Holmes-esque. Like from that's what it reminded me of rewatching it, because I watched it, I don't know, probably 7 years ago. I don't know, a long time ago. Because I was just looking for Tim Burton content. And I watched that and Ed Wood on the same day. It was a lot of content.
Awesome.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. That's a lot of Burton. Okay.
Yeah, it's a lot of Burton. I Burtoned the heck out of it. And And when I saw it then, an interesting thing is my first introduction to Christopher Walken was not any of the things which everyone would know him for, was Hairspray. And so when I first saw, yeah, I know. So when I saw him in this, I was like, oh wow, that's a little different. He's doing like a scary character. No, Hairspray was the thing which was different.
Yeah, that's the exception. Yeah. Hairspray's not the rule. Yeah,
no,
okay.
Absolutely not.
Well, I remember reading one of the reviews of Sleepy Hollow, and they said Christopher Walken is an R movie waiting to happen in this one. And I mean, we could just dive right into Christopher Walken right now. I remember watching an interview with him about this, and he was like, "It's great. I don't have any lines," in his weird voice. He's like, "I don't have any lines. I just, he looks scary," and and the idea to file the teeth down is really, really a wild concept. And what you were saying about this being a detective story, that's what's cool. They took a short story that's about 20 pages long and made it into a whodunit. I think it was smart for them to make to make Ichabod a constable, because the story is an American classic. It could be argued that it's the first American horror story, Gothic horror story. I mean, they say Poe invented it, but I think Poe was writing after Washington Irving. Washington Irving didn't write too many ghost stories. He did this one, and there's another one I forget. But this is just like a piece of Americana. And everybody knows about Ichabod Crane and the Headless Horseman, but I think it was necessary for them to make him a constable, because in the story, he's a school teacher.
Yeah,
which is like a weird vibe.
Well,
go ahead.
No, we were saying this, and just before we got on, the best version of this story, I think, I love this version, but is the Disney film, the animated Disney film. They depict Ichabod Crane exactly how he is in the story, looking like a stork with big feet and a goofball, But this was, they retained some of those elements of Ichabod's personality in the story in this movie. You were saying, Mike, he comes off as a buffoon, or like this nervous, when the spider's crawling across the floor and he's jumping on the bed, kill it, I like that part. I like those things.
He's got conflicting personality traits. He's both cowardly and brave at the same time. He's both foolish and extremely intelligent. I was reminded, I don't know, well, Ryan might know this, or Bram might know this, but, I was reminded of Columbo.
Okay.
He comes off as actually quite buffoonish, and but you're just like, one more thing, and you're like, oh, he's got you. It starts out that kind of way, where he's being dismissed. So on and so forth. But when he really puts his mind to it, he's actually quite intelligent. The story starts off with my favorite buddy, Martin Landau.
There he is.
Catching it in the by the Headless Horseman. They're in a cornfield. And so there's just a murder going on there, and you're not exactly sure what's happening. And then you launch into New York City, where Ichabod Crane is, I guess this is almost the 19th century, so we're in the late 1700s, where there's this argument that Crane is making that science is greater than torture for solving crimes. You can't beat a confession out of somebody, because maybe all these people you've just beaten up are actually innocent, whereas he prefers, a scientific method to things, which makes him look really sort of buffoonish, like we said. But he's actually, the precursor to the future.
And they did that on purpose. They made him ahead of time, essentially, with his forensic stuff. I also want to point out with this movie, this is a nice tribute to the Hammer films. I think this is a nice tribute to the Hammer films. It's got two Hammer actors in it. the great Christopher Lee, who I think there wasn't enough of him in the movie. He's kind of the mission giver.
Yep.
He's the burgomaster. He's like, okay, go out and do this and bye. And then we have the great Michael Goff as the notary. And can we talk about those guys? Because it's an amazing cast.
Hold on a second. Go ahead.
No,
Sure.
the 5 town elders. I mean, the looks of them and how they're all different sizes and all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And you got Michael Gambon
Jeffrey
and
Jones.
I said Goff, Richard Griffiths, who Harry Potter fans might know as Uncle Vernon. You got Ian McDiarmid, Emperor Palpatine in there. You got Jeffrey Jones.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. And Jeffrey Jones, as we know, did a lot of collaboration with Tim Burton. I think this was his last movie with Burton. And we know Jeffrey Jones had some troubles and stuff, but he's a fantastic character in this.
I thought you bringing up size was interesting because I specifically noticed that Depp or Ichabod, he was so much smaller than everyone, and so he was kind of like scampering across the room, going like, "Oh,
Yeah.
It adds to the feeling of that scene and makes it kind of more playful. And I think his whole character makes the movie more playful.
Yeah.
In the way he approaches interaction in that way.
There's a scene in there where he's confronting all the town elders and reviewing the facts of the case and like giving them the stink eye, as he's doing it. And he comes up to Jeffrey Jones and he barely comes up to Jeffrey Jones's shoulder.
That's what I was mentioning.
Jeffrey Jones is looking at him like, why are you, it's like being bothered by like a 12-year-old kid. Like, what do you want, kid? Leave me alone.
Yeah.
Hold on a second. We got some comments here.
Okay.
Eric is in the house. What's up, man? He said one of Burton's last great movies is Sleepy Hollow. Big Fish was his last true good film, though.
Okay.
And you might be right about that. Jocelyn Jeffries is here in the house. Big Fish, one of her favorite movies. And sorry, I'm apparently logged in as Jocelyn's mom. So Jocelyn's mom has taken over Jocelyn's account. And okay. So who knows what's going to happen from there.
Yeah. And I've always been a big Burton fan from day one. I mean, his first big movie was one of my favorite movies, Pee-wee's Big Adventure. And then just from there, you had hit after hit. After that, it was Beetlejuice and Edward Scissorhands and Batman and Ed Wood and all that, and I'm always up for Tim Burton, but I know we were having that lengthy discussion before we started about him kind of fallen off in recent years, but this one I love that it's the when we were watching it the other night and I was saying this is a tribute to Hammer. I wonder what it would have been like if Hammer had made the movie. I think Peter Cushing would have played Ichabod Crane. And Lee would have been in it, definitely.
It's entirely possible. I mean, like you said, Lee is sort of the taskmaster, saying you're the one being put, you're always criticizing everyone. Now you're being put to the test.
Yeah.
And it's always a treat to see him.
Did you notice he has the wings behind him? They did that on purpose. Like as a little Dracula callback, I think.
That's nice stuff. It was good to see him, although, like you said, not nearly enough.
As a rebuttal to Eric, I want to do as the youngster in the crowd, I have to advocate for Corpse Bride. I love that movie. Okay. I know this is a little different. I know it's animated, but I love that movie. It's one of my favorites for a lot of reasons, but that's a whole other discussion. I have to advocate.
No, it's all good. One of the things that stands out in this movie is how beautifully it's shot.
Oh yeah,
one of the things we talked about when we picked this movie, or movies in general for this month, is that the movies for Halloween had to have a particular type of atmosphere about them. A certain sort of moodiness. Yeah, and everything is just so damn dark.
Yeah. Well, what they did, I watched like the making of thing, and what they did when they after they filmed it is that they kind of sucked some of the color out of it. They desaturated
Yeah, I was
it.
going to say they lowered the saturation.
Yeah, so that it gives it that kind of gloomy feel, and that Ichabod's like pale and everybody's just pale and it looks cold and muddy and stuff like that. You
And
know?
you see that later. You see that later in his later films, like
Mhm.
not Nightmare for Christmas, different film. No, later, like especially in Sweeney Todd,
Yeah.
that the saturation is just rock bottom, and
Yeah.
the only scene which there's like any moniker of more saturation is in the one scene when it's supposed to be playfully saturated. Basically, it's
Yeah.
supposed to be her dream. But
Yeah.
that's
Oh,
the
yeah,
only-
yeah. Well, and that's in this one where he
Mhm.
has his dreams about his mother. Those ones are saturated, but I think they lowered the saturation on this to give the blood more vibrancy and to make it more kind of in your face, because this is a bloody movie.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's
so
got to
bloody.
share blood. And just so everybody knows out there, this is not what the real Sleepy Hollow looks like.
Right, but I mean, look at this stuff. I mean,
No, I know, yeah.
it looks like,
Yeah.
it's overcast and it's just dark,
Yeah.
and it sets the whole tone for things that are just,
there it is. Yeah.
it's just spooky as hell.
Uh-huh.
I don't know that this was necessarily a Halloween movie, but damn.
Well, it's funny because the story itself was never really, I don't think Irving wrote it as a Halloween story. It was just always associated with that. It doesn't really specify in the story that it was Halloween.
I think it's the jack-o'-lantern that really catches us all up, and then it just has the vibe of Halloween. Like when you mentioned that each movie has to have that feeling, this movie definitely has that feeling.
Yeah,
and it felt like Halloween. Like I was in the mood to watch this because I was like, it's Halloween time. Like whoa.
Yeah.
What happened in Washington Irving's story, and for me, what made it so scary was the ambiguous ending.
Mm-hmm.
Crane just disappears. He's just never heard from again.
Yeah.
Whereas most stories, I imagine, especially back then, often offered, some sort of resolution as to what was actually happening. But here, it's just chasing him and chasing him and chasing him, and then it shoots to like the next morning.
Yeah,
and
all they find is his hat.
Yeah.
And pieces of the pumpkin. Yeah,
and that's what they say. Like as he was a bachelor, and really, and because we talked, this came up in the Dead Zone. Walken was talking about Ichabod Crane. He's a bachelor and he's a no one's dead. Like no one bothered about him. They just kind of brushed it off.
Well, they're and Irving does leave it ambiguous. However, he does say there is a line in there when Brom Bones marries Katrina. They say Brom Bones always had a knowing look on his face when they talked about it, basically implying that he's the one who dressed up as the Headless Horseman and Ichabod out of town. But again, it's left ambiguous. But that's what they play on in this movie, because they have that scene, the bridge scene with the pumpkin.
Yeah,
but it's Casper Van Dien.
Yeah, and they do
Casper
the Brom
Van Dien.
Bones thing in that.
Yeah, Johnny Rico.
That's one of my, and I noticed this the last time I watched it this past Saturday. That was one of my very tiny quibbles about this movie, is that I don't think they used Brom Bones enough, and his rivalry with Ichabod Crane was kind of like
His rivalry with Ichabod Crane was kind of non-existent. Like I didn't really touch on that. I just kind of like their relationship was not really fleshed out for me.
No,
for anyone. But
he got rocked by the Headless Horseman, though.
Yeah, and then Ichabod and her relationship was a little like there wasn't enough chemistry, except for that one scene when he's like looking at her, and it just hit right where it was like when he was like, "You've bewitched me" or whatever. It made me laugh out loud, which was not what you was supposed to be. But because I predicted it.
Hold on a second. We got some comments here. I can't believe it. Alan MacGyver is here. My God, Mr. MacGyver, it's great to. This is Mr. MacGyver. If it is, it's great to see you. Mostly unfamiliar names and theater stuff. Esoteria to me. Good to see the man from Elwood after all these years, Mr. MacGyver. Thank you for stopping in this show. Yeah, it's good to hear from you. You're the last person I expected to drop in tonight, but that's really awesome. Mr. MacGyver was my high school biology teacher, Ryan.
Wow.
And is actually Jocelyn's grandfather. So that's really cool. All right, JP Jeffries, she's resumed her own profile now. It says the budget was 70 million box office, budget was 70 million. The box office was 207 million. International 106.
And you can
domestic
tell
101.
Wow.
With the structure of it and the quality of it. Not saying it's bad by any means. It has that budget quality.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting that something to note is I recently watched Silence of the Lambs for the first time, which is like crazy.
Oh, jeez.
Like,
okay,
I went this long without seeing it. But what's interesting was watching a movie that set a precedent for whatever in the future changes your perspective on it later. So for this movie, a lot of things that happen in it, like a lot of the key trademarks of Tim Burton that happen in it, are kind of old hat now because he has done it so much. But it wasn't then. It was unique and interesting and new then. And that's kind of what happened with Silence of the Lambs for me. Was like when I watched it, I was kind of bored by Hannibal Lecter because I've seen his character a bunch, but I wanted more. I wanted more Buffalo Bill. And it was that because of a lot of reasons. And I think it's that sort of thing where the film gets reinvented in a different way and gets looked at in a different way because of its cultural.
If you're looking for something along those lines, you want to get into Netflix and the Hannibal series, where Hannibal is played by Mads Mikkelsen. And what could have been the biggest piece of crap is just a diamond.
Really?
It's royal. It's just royal. By the first episode, I was completely hooked. I own all 3 seasons on Blu-ray. Mr. MacGyver says, now a movie I will seek out. So I'm not sure if he's talking about Silence of the Lambs. He must be talking about Sleepy Hollow.
I do not think you will enjoy Silence of the Lambs.
That doesn't strike me as okay.
I don't think he'll enjoy Silence of the Lambs. I think we mentioned it though the other time I was at their house and we talked about it. But they may like Sleepy Hollow because they like detective, like British detective movies.
It's very interesting.
Gory.
Yeah. Well, it's not. It's just it's kind of a soft R. I would rate it sort of a soft R compared to some of these other movies that we've covered here. I mean, for a Burton movie and for a Johnny Depp movie, it probably is a little more bloody than you're used to, but it's not. It's not gory necessarily.
No.
There's some combat blood from swords and axes.
A lot of blood, not necessarily gory.
It's getting chopped off and all that.
That's.
I'll tell you what, though. I think for me, the scariest scene in that movie is when the horseman goes after the Killians, the midwife, and her husband and son.
Boy.
When he busts in that and the kid lights the candle and the imagery is fantastic. The things are spinning around on the wall and he comes in there and when he kills the husband, but then when he kills the mother and then that poor little kid's hiding under the floorboard and the guy, the Headless Horseman leaves and you think, okay, this kid's going to make it. Yeah. And then he turns around and you're like, oh crap. That's the scariest scene for me. Yeah. Because you're like, wow. I mean, that's crazy stuff.
It reminded me a little bit of Breaking Bad because the whole thing which they do in that show is and I'm not gonna really give anything away, but to kill a kid in that show is the worst crime, which is a really interesting stance to make from you wouldn't expect that from that show. And that's what it reminded me of in this. When I watched this, I was like, oh, okay, there you go. It's the Breaking Bad rule. And it's not really,
but Breaking Bad was long before this,
that's disparate media. But it's the same thing, is that in this culture, in the Western culture, in most cultures, to kill a child, a young child, is the worst crime. And so
the way that it's done is done in a sort of shocking way because you think the kids are going to make it. Because even if you get into a movie like Aliens, where you think Newt is going to get it in that one scene. She doesn't. But this way that it's done, it's very quick. And it's very,
you don't see anything really.
No, it's done without a lot of fuss. So you can almost sort of overlook it. You're like, oh, but then you've moved on. They don't linger there. And I think that's that's really clever on his part. Instead of focusing on it, it just becomes another thing that happens very quickly. Without any, necessary, intention or, extra malevolence or anything like that.
Yeah.
That was a good scene. It wasn't my scariest scene, but I think it was a well directed scene.
Yeah. Visually. And, that's the thing too. I think, going back for a minute to the whole Brom Bones thing, and, they had the bridge scene, and Brom Bones got rocked by the Headless Horseman, by the way. That was one of the cooler deaths in the movie when he got cut in half. But there he is, that poor jerk. But but the thing is, what they also played on, though, is that it was actually a ghost, and that's what I like, is that the horseman in the movie was a straight up ghost,
Well, he's not I guess he's a ghost. I don't know. He struck me as more like demon or something. But he's like an evil spirit.
I guess,
form. And that's the difference between, I would say, like how we typically refer to a ghost. But but in the movie they do talk about how it's like I don't want to tango with a ghost, and I want to fight flesh and blood. And we do see when he puts on the skull the that interesting creation of his face, and we see the flesh, the blood, and so it also brings in an interesting idea of the dynamic between what we refer to as a human and what we refer to as past human, but that's a whole other thing. It's just interesting.
Well, it's interesting too with the Headless Horseman, and a lot of people think that like Washington Irving essentially invented the Headless Horseman. He did, but headless specters and spirits like that have existed in other folklore. Like in Irish folklore, there's the Dúlan who rides around holding his head, stuff like that. And he's a harbinger of death or destruction or something like that. So, and Mike, I was saying before, I was talking to Jocelyn while you were off camera for a minute. If you ever get a chance, go to Sleepy Hollow, the real Sleepy Hollow. It's not too far from here. It's about 3 hours. Right over the you go right up the parkway over the Tappan Zee Bridge, and then it's hook a right and you're in there. My dad, my grandmother and all her family were from up there, the Elmsford, Tarrytown, Sleepy Hollow area. And when we were up there, we went to the old Dutch church burial ground where Washington Irving got the idea for the story. All the headstones, or a lot of the headstones, are actually made out of metal. And there's Van Tassels in there.
Okay.
There's Van Rippers. That's where he got the names for the characters. He just kind of looked at the headstones and, and there's one spot supposedly where the soldier who is the inspiration for the horseman is. There's an unmarked grave. They have it like roped off, but that's supposedly the spot, because in the story, in the book, the story, I think the horseman had his head knocked off by a cannonball.
That's what I seem to recall.
But the real, the Hessians
much more grand. What a way to go out.
Yeah. But no, it's
especially just your head. It's just to hit you right in the face.
It's pretty wild though. If you go up to Sleepy Hollow, especially around this time of year, we went up in for teachers convention, right in the beginning of November. So it's all decorated up there. It's really neat. They have the Headless Horseman Bridge, but it's really a cool little town. If you've never been there, it's neat. Definitely, touristy, but
hold on a second. We got a bunch of comments here. Mr. McIver's going to pass by Silence of the Lambs, but not Sleepy Hollow. Okay, he recalls the Disney production. Eric is here, and he says, perfect casting of Walken as the horseman. Walken was going through his crazy, weird phase publicly and professionally at the same time, so it's a total fit. What John talked about, and I don't want to stay on this for too long, when you, I think, brought up during the top 10 list, Sleepy Hollow, the way that essentially, like you said, he has no lines. But but his gravity is so profound in the role that when I see the Headless Horseman, I'm thinking Christopher Walken.
Yeah.
And when you see his face and he's motioning and he's like John says, it's just the hardest part of acting is to do nothing and make it look interesting.
Yeah.
And, he does that perfectly. I mean, that's just fantastic. Jillian says the screenplay of Sleepy Hollow by Seven scribe Andrew Kevin Walken handles the mystery of the Headless. Andrew Kevin Walker handles the mystery of the Headless Horseman's identity, almost like a lost Sherlock Holmes novel.
Yeah, which is what I picked up on too. Was that it's very Sherlock Holmes-esque.
Yeah, Eric says, loved Casper Van Dien as this, as little as we got to him. Perfect jerk as Brom. Also really liked him in Starship Troopers. Eric, you and I have to get to that Starship Troopers episode. We've been talking about that for a long time, and we keep missing it. Now, Jocelyn, someone's commandeered your profile again. Even though Starship Troopers is ridiculous, I don't know why Jocelyn would say a thing like that. Jacqueline, and you may want to talk to Jocelyn. I watched it again recently and really enjoyed it. Ben Perry is saying hello. I don't know who Ben Perry is. Welcome to the show.
Boyfriend.
Okay, well, welcome Ben Perry, boyfriend, to the show. And hold on, Jocelyn says, again, I just posted the history of the original story with this stream on my Facebook feed.
Not on my Facebook feed. I imagine my mother's Facebook feed.
It could be on yours anyway. She is technically you here.
I imagine. I need to check on her computer and make sure that she's logged into hers. But that is the woes of living in the same house. But an interesting thing about Brahms is that I wanted more of that dynamic. I wanted because it felt like we just dropped like Gaston in, and then was like, okay, now he's dead.
Well, you would have needed to establish another love. You would have needed to establish a legitimate triangle.
Well, that's what I wanted. I wanted it to be. I didn't necessarily want her to be into him or anything. So he is attractive, I guess.
Yeah,
but clearly he's like unattractive in personality.
Right.
Yeah,
and so I didn't necessarily want that. I just wanted there to be like more of like a push and pull if that was what was supposed to be there, or completely let it be if that wasn't what was supposed to be there. And then I never really got the tension of, like I mentioned earlier, with Brahms and Ichabod.
Yeah,
and then also Ichabod's just such a fun name. Anyway, Ichabod. But then. And it didn't feel like it had the payoff at the end when Ichabod and Katrina got together again. I'm just like, okay, I need that.
Yeah, well, Katrina in the story, she's clearly playing Ichabod. Mm-hmm. She likes the rivalry between him and Brom, and she instigates it by doing all this stuff. And then finally, when Ichabod proposes to her, and she shoots him down, and that's when he leaves and then gets chased by the horsemen. Mm-hmm. So she's not really like this nice innocent character in the story because she's playing him the whole time.
Well, it's small town living. I mean, she's probably bored. Yeah. Now this young guy comes from New York, which is like the biggest place in the world, and hey, I can have a little fun here, and no one's the wiser. It's that kind of thing. It's the old story in the book. He's a little different. He's a little bit different.
And I guess I'm still like not really into Christina Ricci as Katrina.
I like Christina Ricci.
I like Christina Ricci, but she was kind of like still in that. She still seemed like a kid,
Yeah.
Like for me, I think it took me a long time to really enjoy Leonardo DiCaprio because a lot of his movies, he seemed like he was like still a teenager, even when he was an adult.
But that's authentic. I mean, she would be someone young.
Yeah.
At that age, but if she was like playing a 25-year-old or something, I mean, she would have been married by then. Her parents would have, or dad would have arranged it or something.
No, I understand that. But, I don't know. I guess because she had just come off playing like Wednesday Addams and, I don't have a problem with Christina Ricci as an actress. I don't know. I just, like you were saying, Jocelyn, I don't think like there was good chemistry.
There wasn't enough chemistry between the three. There wasn't enough chemistry between Ichabod and her. And also, this is my own personal problem. I just kept on thinking, oh, wow, okay, wow, Sweeney. Like,
Yeah.
about
I'll
that
tell you
one.
what, another one of my favorite scenes in that movie, visually in this movie, is the scene in the church
Yes, I was going to
where
bring that up.
right after Baldus gets pulled through the window and you see that top-down
Mhm.
shot panning over from the that little balcony part, and then you see her passed out on the floor.
Oh,
You
this is
see
a different one than
then
others.
you see the two dead
Oh.
guys. You see Palpatine and Jeffrey Jones dead, and then you see the eye. That's a beautiful shot.
It's a good push-in, yeah. That's not what I was talking about, but that is a good push-in.
Yeah.
I was thinking about the one where it was completely white and then it was just the doorway. I don't remember.
Oh
the
yeah, where he
context of
imagined
it.
his dad as the
Mhm.
Headless Horseman. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that part of the movie, again, it's okay. That you got to have some backstory with
Yeah.
Ichabod, you
That's
know.
just a striking shot, but it was like a weird push-in. Yeah.
And I like that actress who played his mom, Lisa Marie. She was in a lot of Tim Burton's movies at the time because she was his girlfriend. And I love her. She played Vampira in Ed Wood, which is great.
Oh, really? Oh, God.
Yeah. She was
That's
Vampira.
another movie I haven't
Ed Wood.
seen in like 20 years.
Oh, it's great. But
you guys are like the enthusiasts here. I'm like a passing sort of Burton fan. I mean, you'll catch me with I own this. I own Big Fish. Now we've covered both in the movies, but I'm not, like a per se Burton fan. I remember the
Burton fan growing up, just because I really loved Corpse Bride. I liked Nightmare Before Christmas. I rewatched that the other day. Still slaps. Yeah, it's still really great. The music's great. I think Tim Burton. I am not a huge fan of his love stories. The only one which I've ever really enjoyed from him was Sweeney Todd because it had its own starting spot of that dynamic, which I love that dynamic. I really like Sweeney Todd. I don't know if you can tell. But that's the only love story I've seen from him that I was like, and then Big Fish I liked, but not necessarily in the love story aspect of it. Because it wasn't like much to it. It was she was beautiful, and that was that, They
were already together by the time the story started.
And that was her whole character thing. So.
But I mean, that story came from a place where he had just lost both of his parents, I think, within 2 years or something like that. So I mean, that was the part that really grabbed you because that was the part he was speaking to from inside. Hold on a second. Now, Mr. McIver says, Ichabod, the glory of the Lord has departed. And let's see, John is here. John is in the house. She is a seductress, and Ichabod is a new prey. Yeah, she's got a new plaything.
That's what I said. Yeah,
she's got a new plaything. She's just
not in the movie, but in the book, in the story. Yeah, definitely.
Women are not charitably shown in this film at all.
Yeah.
Well, some of them are. I mean, and some of them have just been like his mother. What happens to his mother? Christina Ricci's first movie was Mermaids with a Winona Ryder when she was dating Johnny Depp. She was 10. 12 years later, she's starring with Depp as a love interest. Creepier than anything Irving wrote. I don't know how. I've never heard that before. Okay.
Yeah. I was just going to say.
Oh wait, no. Wait, let's touch on what Jocelyn was talking about, the depiction of women in the movie.
Oh yeah,
I
okay.
think it's interesting. So, when the wife or the stepmother was shown, I was just like, okay, that's fine.
Wicked stepmother.
Yeah. I was like, okay, there wasn't much precedent set up for her, as there would have been if Katrina. My gosh, that's correct, right? Okay.
Yeah,
I keep on thinking Katarina, and I have no idea why. But Katrina, when she if she was revealed as the
villain
at the end, I would have been like, yeah, cool. I see that. I see that vibe. But with the stepmother, she just was kind of a non-character, and then she showed up and she was like,
yeah.
I'm having sex with everyone.
You know what? Okay. I don't think.
God bless her.
Yeah, I don't think it would have worked. I don't think it would have worked with another actress because Miranda Richardson is great in this. She's so over the top and perfect, and she's a great comedic actress too. I mean, she I remember her from her like Blackadder days and stuff like that with Hugh Laurie and Rowan Atkinson and Stephen Fry. And you see her in this, and yeah, she's very unassuming in the beginning, and then she's the one who's controlling the Headless Horseman,
Right.
Which
It's
I
not.
like.
Good. Good.
No, I said I like that aspect too. That the horseman was being controlled by somebody.
Yeah.
That they had the skull, and that was the way to control him, to get him to kill the certain people. Who were involved.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, we haven't talked about it too much. There's a huge element of witchcraft going on here.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of that, which runs counter to Depp's position or Ichabod Crane's position of reason.
Mm-hmm.
He's trying to get away from superstition and attack this thing with reason, whereas in this case it's a legitimate case of supernatural happenings and goings on throughout the story, and like his own reason is failing him here. So that makes for an interesting dynamic. Miranda Richardson, I thought she was good. I think you're right in that there's not much build up necessarily. Having seen this maybe for the fourth or fifth time, I don't know. Could she? I don't know. It has more of a comedic element, so she can't really come across as like a villain that you hate, kind of person. But I see Jack O'Lantern's point there. Although I wouldn't have wanted it to be Katrina. I wouldn't have wanted to be Katrina. I'm reminded of, because she doesn't do much. And I'm reminded of, I don't know, this has nothing to do with Sleepy Hollow, and I'm only going to touch on it for a second, but if anybody's seen Clint Eastwood's movie Mystic River, where Laura Linney is Sean Penn's wife, and she does nothing throughout the movie, and then in the last 10 minutes of the movie, she comes on like Lady Macbeth.
Wow.
And you're just like, holy shit, like this woman is just fucking evil. You're like, holy crap, So I see your point, if there either could have been a stronger presentation from Miranda Richardson when the reveal comes about. Or they could have built up a bit more, throughout the story to make it less of a you're like, huh, kind of thing. Then I see that.
And the tone was really interesting. The fact that both, like, all of us are kind of bouncing between, it was comedic and then it was also like horror, like there was tonal issues, I would say, in this from my perspective, in that the comedy didn't necessarily hit for me, which was a personal thing, but I could see when the comedy was happening.
Right.
And it was interesting that sometimes it would just be comedy and then it'd be like, okay, well, now we're back on the case, instead of being combined. There's a thing in filmmaking where it's every line has to have, well, at least it's a thing in filmmaking which some people preach and then I like to live by, where every line has to have at least two of many different uses. So one can be character building, one can be world building, one can be comedic, and then there can be relationship building. And when comedy lines just happen, then they're strictly comedic or strictly character building. Like, this one balanced it pretty well on most lines, but there were some lines when I was like, and then when Ichabod, when he was learning to ride the horse, when he was like, turn around, horsey, I was like, I wonder if that's going to come back when he rides the horse later, but then it didn't. It was just like he was like ready to ride.
There has to be a reason, just like the spider. Like they went from a serious thing, and all of a sudden he just became like a buffoon again, and you're like, wait, why is he climbing up there?
Yeah, well, the reason for the spider was so they could uncover the thing under the bed, the little spell that was under the bed that she kissed on. But him riding the horse backwards was actually a little shout out to the animated movie.
No. And that's why when it happened, I was like, whoa, like I had a memory. But no, that wasn't my problem. I think him riding the horse backwards was fine. But there was at one point when he was riding with Brahms, I think, when it was riding over to the bridge. He was choice at riding horses. Like, he was fine at it. And it was like, I either want him to be bad at riding horses or good at riding horses. This is the vibe of him being bad at riding horses if he's like, a science man.
It's not a Hitchcock script. I mean, it's not anything like that. But hold on a second. We got Jocelyn is back. You're back again. Mom here. Science versus supernatural makes the church scenes much more significant. Yeah, because initially you're thinking he can't get in because it's the church. But then you find out it's because, she's crafted the evil eye there on the church floor. And John says, in the days of the Irving story, women were in the background. When the stepmom shows her hand, it is supposed to be about the power of women over men, either with sex or with headless horse magic. That's an interesting. I mean, they would have to be moving with it, and that there's, historically true. They would be moving in the background. You take them for granted. It wouldn't even occur to you. That this could be a dangerous person.
I think that's a strong note, and I think her being the ending villain is like a great move. I just wish it was set up more, so that we kind of saw her character a little bit more. And something that happens with it is that the script was never gave the audience a chance to figure it out. And there's a lot of movies I've seen, like Knives Out is super great because it gives the audience. You don't like it? You don't like Knives Out?
I wasn't crazy. It was okay. I wasn't crazy about it.
I love that movie. I love Rian Johnson, but I love that movie because it gives the audience the ability to figure it out, but it doesn't give the audience the answers. It just goes, here are all the clues, and then it gives us the option to figure it out. And then when we're done, we feel smart. And that's one of the good things. That's one of the nice things about like page turning novels, like what's it called? Gone Girl feels like a page turner.
Oh, because Jesus!
For the first half of
that movie's crazy.
You can make guesses, and I called it myself, and I felt smart when it was revealed. I was like, "Oh yeah, I know what's up." I know how women be.
Hold on. John loves Knives Out. So all right, you got to work on your spelling there, brother.
He was very excited.
Knives Out. I love Knives Out.
Knives Out.
When you come on the show tomorrow, John, you're going to be Knives Out. That's it. That's
I think we should, for a little bit at least. And they were briefly touched on earlier. I think we should talk about the town elders because they're such great characters.
It's an ensemble cast.
Yeah, and I love that each of them. Like, they could have just been quick throwaway characters, but the fact that each of them was involved, they each have a personality. And I think of all of them, I'll go back to Jeffrey Jones as being the most intimidating and the most, because he's the minister, he's the reverend, but he's the biggest hypocrite, because he's messing around with the stepmother.
Yeah, he was going to throw him out of the church.
Yeah, and it's just... But his manner and where he's got that hoity-toity, I'm above everybody else. And like when he's like, he just dismisses Ichabod's science and is like, this is the only book you need to read. Like they're all such really good, fleshed out characters.
They're almost stereotypes.
Almost,
but I think I'm not saying that as a knock. I mean, I'm just saying it more as a matter of fact.
Characters, when you see them, you know them. You see their differences, even though they're all like around the same age. They're all kind of British white guys in.
But there's a hierarchy there.
Each of them is distinct and different.
But I think among them there's a hierarchy. You have the two stronger guys. You have Baldus and Steenwick, the Reverend, and then you have the three weaker guys. You have
Notary,
you have Hardenbrook, Lancaster, and Phillips, who are the weaker of them. And it's neat to see that that even among them, you see the ones who are kind of being pressured into this, or bullied into. I mean, Yeah,
John
that's
Tim
true.
Burton has great minor roles in almost every film he's done. Like John said when we were talking about frailty, as his way of saying, he can take small parts, but have actors say, I'm not a small actor.
Exactly.
And do something about it.
And Corpse Bride is no different from that.
And you're out of the stream. Okay, good. Yeah, we're not talking Corpse Bride.
I know, but the side characters are really good, and so that's what I related when he mentioned that.
Oh, I lost my train of thought. Go ahead, guys. I lost my train of thought for a split second.
Oh, Ryan, did you have something?
No, I was just, like I was saying.
Let's not all three of us fall flat here. Come on. There are three people on the show for a reason, man. Come on.
I really just enjoyed all those characters, and I think it is a great cast. And I remember
Oh, that's what I
reading,
wanted to say.
I remember hearing something about Michael Gambon was joking that he was going to send his head to auditions. The head that got cut off, and he was going to send that to auditions instead of going himself.
I remember putting in the notes today. I said Dumbledore gets it. You know, that's the way that I described
Dumbledore,
it.
That's it.
But you know, hold on. Let me just get this out real quick.
Yeah,
one of the things I wanted to discuss, and it's unfortunate, so you know, I don't want to tread heavily here, is what happened to Jeffrey Jones in life. Because he's just such a fantastic actor.
Yeah.
And you and I, one of the first shows you and I did was Ravenous, which he did in the same year. There's like all these movies that are, you know, so contrasting, like Depp doing The Ninth Gate, same year as this. Jeffrey Jones doing Ravenous, the same year as this. And it's just, he was just such a, well, he still is, I'm sure, probably just such a great performer. And unfortunately, you know.
Yeah, I don't know if he's acting anymore.
I saw him in when HBO did the Deadwood movie. He reprised his role, but he was only in there for like 2 minutes. It was a very minimal kind of you know, presentation.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking here. Apparently, the last thing he did was in 2016, but then the Deadwood the movie was 2019.
Yeah.
So you know,
but that was a TV movie. That was an HBO movie.
But I mean, like, but that's one of the good things, and that's what another thing I like about Burton, and I'll just use Mel Brooks for an example too, is that they have their stock actors, they have their company that they always use. You know, like Burton's always got, you know, he'll have Jeffrey Jones. He's used Johnny Depp umpteenth times. He's got Lisa Marie will pop up. Like you'll see different people will pop up in different movies, but he always uses like almost the same people. And like, I mean, how many movies has he had Helena Bonham Carter in now? You know, he used Michelle Pfeiffer twice, once in Batman Returns and in Dark Shadows, which I like. Dark Shadows. Dark Shadows is funny. That's a good one.
Yeah, Dark Shadows is a good time. I wouldn't, you know,
it's not a great movie, but it's good.
It's not high art, but it's a good time for sure.
Oh yeah. But I like that aspect. I like those directors who use a lot of the same people in their films, you know, and
you like that because a lot of people hate that.
Yeah, and he used Christopher Lee a few times. He used Michael Goff. I mean, shoot, I would want to use Christopher Lee as often as I could.
Yeah.
I mean, but Tim Burton's idol was Vincent Price. And that was he made that short film, Vincent, that animated film was his very first. Is about a boy who wants to be Vincent Price, and it was narrated by Vincent Price. And he finally got to use Vincent Price in Edward Scissorhands. But, you know, that's beside the point. But I do, no, that's it. I like that he uses.
Well, there are lots of people. I mean, Tarantino does that. Nolan does it. John's in here talking about, Scorsese.
Yep.
You know, I mean, it's a common thing, and I actually think it's quite refreshing. You know, go ahead.
I wanted to add, I think it's interesting that there's a kind of homework you have to do on all films from this time period, not of 1999, set in the time period that it is, like colonial-esque, because we understand why the church is on the flip side of witchery. It's not the right word.
Witchcraft,
witchcraft, because of our understanding of Crucible. And I think with my pre-knowledge of going into, I really enjoyed reading Crucible. I don't know what year I did. I really enjoyed that. And so I think the reason why I was a little disappointed by not having that, having enough of the stepmom and having enough of the love triangle is because when I went into it, I saw the aesthetic and saw the dynamic of the witchcraft versus religion, and I went, okay, cool, we're doing Crucible, New Age Crucible or whatever, and I was like, okay, and then we didn't get enough of like the townspeople for what I was ready for, I guess.
Well, I think, the story, I believe. No, I was going to say,
is it? Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I believe the story itself takes place in the 1790s, like the movie.
Yeah.
So I don't know how prevalent witchcraft was at that time. You know, I mean, after the debacle in Salem, you know, I don't know how, you know, I don't know how popular it was or mainstream or anything like that, because at that point,
all of the women in there are several references in the movie where the ladies are using these sort of natural herbal Wicca kind of remedies without
Wiccan
any condemnation
kind of stuff,
kind of stuff as opposed to black magic which is another thing entirely. We're going to be covering that next week when we cover the witch. That's fucking witchcraft. But we get to towards the end, and we talk about the reveal. But then, for me personally, the scariest scene is when Miranda Richardson wakes up on that horse.
Yeah,
and she looks up and she sees this staring her in the face, and it's just justice, it's just she's gonna she's going into that tree with him, and now he's gonna have something to play with, because you're right, this was interesting to the extent in the way that she was controlling him. She was controlling him also, so he wasn't just some dumb whatever, he was aware of the fact that he was being manipulated and probably quite resentful of the fact that, she had this upper hand over him.
He had his mission, and he was cutting his losses by being controlled by her to get what he needed. And then once the tides turned and he was able to get what he needed without doing what she said, then
he didn't need her. They didn't need her anymore. And by the way, thanks for wasting my time. For all this, getting me to do all this shit for you. And then finally, it's kind of interesting because we get to the final scene, and there's some daylight, or they're going to New York, so relative daylight.
A little Burton Easter egg. She's wearing a Beetlejuice dress.
Oh God.
That's a little Burton. Burton throws stuff like that in his movie.
Well, something that's interesting, because I looked up Christina Ricci on IMDb, and she's only 5'1". So what does that make Depp, about 5'6"?
Yeah, he's really short.
Yeah, he's not. Yeah,
you can see in the the discovery scene, in the scene where he's disclosing all the information that he has at that moment with all of the 5 elders. He's so much smaller than everyone else, and I think it like I mentioned, it adds to his skitteriness and his newness to the whole interaction.
I think at first, when I remember when I saw the movie, I was a little like, Johnny Depp's playing Ichabod Crane, but again, I didn't know the direction they were. Again, I didn't know the direction they were taking the character in. So
well, he's also, he's just not super tall, but he's got that skinny, sort of gangly, thing. And I'm sure he could have played it that way, should the situation have, should the situation called for it.
It's funny though, because when a Tim Burton movie comes out and Johnny Depp's and everybody's like, oh gosh, it's like there's almost like an eye roll because he uses him all the time, and it's like, oh man, come on.
I hope that let's hope that he's back soon, because he's having that huge trouble as to whether or not he's being blackballed, and now he's got I think he's got like $100 million lawsuit against his ex-wife, saying that
she's crazy too, but I think
I heard she got dropped. I heard she's been dropped out of the new Aquaman movie.
Really?
So,
and I think they railroaded him in the new Pirates movie.
They're going to make a Pirates movie without him, which is
I'm not
pointless. I won't see it. Jack Sparrow is pirate. It's Jack Sparrow.
Yeah,
that doesn't make any sense. But
no.
Okay.
But I hope I think Tim Burton. I hope he's got a few more years left in him to do, to kind of do something good, to go out on.
I'm sure he will. He could probably see. To me, he needs to do something, and it's just my opinion, where he changes his tone to an older, like more mature kind of.
Well, that's
thing.
That's
what I would like to see. Like, what would a 60-year-old man have to say? At this age?
I think that's what he did with, if you see a movie like Big Eyes. Big Eyes is a straight drama.
I
There's
really
no,
enjoyed you guys.
and it's you wouldn't if you're watching it. You're like, wait, Tim Burton directed this because it's not his style at all.
It kind of shows his directing chops because I'm not actually a huge fan of his actual directing. I think he's a brilliant person. I think he's a very interesting, strange person.
Yeah.
But his actual directorial ability, I'm not a huge fan of. Like I'd say he's a very creative person. I wouldn't necessarily say he's a great director.
Yeah.
But
that's right. I forgot. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, but when I saw Big Eyes, I was like, oh, hold up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's his like his serious film, you know. I forgot he did that other one, that Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children.
He directed that? Like, of course
he directed that.
But like, did you see that? I saw that.
Yeah, I didn't really care for it that much.
It was okay. I read the book beforehand.
Oh, okay.
And it was.
Yeah. The last thing he did apparently was Dumbo.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm not seeing that.
And on that note,
yeah, I'm not seeing that. But
well,
you know,
I think we've been going at it a little over an hour. I think this is probably a good place to sort of bring it to a close, unless there were any additional points you wanted to make.
No, I wasn't sold. I remember last time I was on, I was like, I'm not a huge fan, but I am not against it. I think it's a great Halloween movie.
It's a great Halloween movie. It's not scary.
No,
some parts of it are. But I mean, if you understand the standard content that we cover here,
it's a fun movie. It's a fun movie. It was in my, I think it was in my top 5 of the top 10. You know,
right? But I mean, Jocelyn was on here one day, and we were covering Big Fish, and just the day before that, I had been on with Bill covering The Devil's Rejects by Rob Zombie. So it was like a complete, shift, from this. And tonight we're covering Tim Burton's Sleepy Hollow. Tomorrow I'll be on with John covering The Changeling. I mean, so when you say it's scary. It's like a relative term, and then there's like the spectrum, where it sort of moves into like some elements are a little bit scary, but
that's why when you guys said you're like the scariest scene for me, I was like genuine contemplating. I was like, what is the scariest scene for me? And I was like, the only one which made me jump was the one with the stepmom's sister.
The witch,
yeah.
That was the only one that made me like jump.
That's Helena Bonham Carter, isn't it?
No, that's Miranda Richardson. That's Miranda Richardson.
No, when she cuts her sister's head off.
She played both parts.
Oh, did she really?
Because remember in the beginning, she said they're twins. Her and her sister were in the woods.
Okay.
And they're the little girls in the beginning. She played both parts. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't know that she played both parts. It was kind of like it was like a small detail. But but that one scene was the only one which made me like jump. But everything else, I was like, it wasn't scary. It was like I was just kind of following this detective, and I think it's a fun.
It's a detective story. Yeah, it really is more of a detective story than anything else.
Yeah,
what I thought was a huge ripoff of this movie, in a sense, was that one, The Raven, that one that was
with John Cusack.
Yeah, as Edgar Allan Poe. I did not like that, and it kind of was like
it almost was like grisly though. It was
a rip off of this because it was like a whodunit kind of thing, and it was just in that. I was like, this is like I'm watching a bad version of Sleepy Hollow, but
Hold on a second. John says he'd like to see Burton do an old-fashioned horror flick like The Wolfman. Well,
he might get that right.
It couldn't be. This was this sort of cinematography here would have been great for a werewolf movie. There was another movie I was watching the other day. And I was like, wow, this is more like a werewolf setup than anything else. And I can't remember what the movie was. And he says it's a fun movie. Yeah, it's a fun movie. That's what it is.
Definitely not as much fun as Knives Out.
Yeah, it's a fun movie.
Okay.
Not as much fun as Knives Out.
Knives Out. Okay, Knives Out. All right. Well, I think that kind of is where we're probably going to bring it to a close. We've been going a little over an hour.
Yeah.
My thanks to both of you. Brom and Jack-o'-lantern over here. We'd like to have you back anytime that you'd like to join us.
Eventually, I'll be back for Sweeney Todd. It's going to happen, everybody.
I don't know. That's a hard sell for Mike.
Anyway, if there's anyway that there are 999 million options other than that one that you.
The cast is fantastic, though.
The cast is
Alan
great.
Rickman,
It has gore. It has horror aspects.
I think it's one of Alan Rickman's best performances, honestly.
Oh yeah,
And Mike, there's a bonus. You get to see Sacha Baron Cohen get killed. So
okay, hold on. Two more comments before we close. Bravo. Okay, I don't know what that moon. I do Sweeney Todd. So
we should do Sweeney Todd together, us three. Let's do it.
Yeah.
And good night, everybody.
Good night.
And on that note. All right, so thank you for everybody who stopped in. Thank you to Mr. McIver. I can't believe that happened tonight. That was really cool. We'll be back. Well, if you see this video, like it. If you feel it's worthy, subscribe to the channel. Jocelyn, is there anything you want to promote? Any channel? Do you have a channel that's going on right now, or some content that you're?
I do have a YouTube channel. I'm currently working on productions. I have like probably 2 or 3 scripts right now, but it's hard to produce in transient period of moving from high school to college, and then also in the transient period of COVID. But I have films up there. It's Jocelyn Jeffries. You can just look up Jocelyn Jeffries, first name Jocelyn like there, and then Jeffries, Jeffries. And you can look up that right on YouTube. You'll see my stuff for Arts at NJ, which is the arts organization I work for. I'm the intern for them. I host most of their streams, and then you can find just my straight up title, which is just my work, and I have probably about 15 films on there.
Great,
nice,
awesome. Wow. All right, I'll have to have I subbed your channel? I think I have.
Maybe.
I think I have. I'll have to look. Okay. Bram, you got any productions underway with work?
Hopefully, I might have something cooking in the summer. For those of you who don't know, I'm very active in live community theater around here, and I've done it for about 20 some odd years. And hopefully theater's coming back. Hopefully in June, I will be doing Shakespeare in Brigantine. We'll be doing Much Ado About Nothing. I'll be directing it.
Oh, very cool.
Wow.
Yeah. So keep your eyes and ears open for that. Hopefully it'll happen. It's just a matter of confirming the dates and, trying to get everybody back.
You got to get a channel going or something where you get some regular content up.
Yeah. I know. When I have time. Okay. I like doing this though. I like just being a guest.
I like having
the regular schmo who shows up on here and
the everyman.
Okay. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
All right. So that's it for our show tonight. We'll be back tomorrow, John and I, to cover the old 41-year-old classic, The Changeling. Halloween Hellfire continues with George C. Scott tomorrow night.
That's the George C. Scott movie.
Creepy as hell haunted house movie. That is a scary movie, and we'll be covering it tomorrow. My thanks again to Brom Bones and Jack-o'-lantern Jocelyn. Stick around after the outro, you two, and for everyone else, don't waste your time with bullshit. Good night.
Good night.